Excellency Minister, it is such a great pleasure to be back in your beautiful country. Minister Sal, who's also the president of AMSEN, the African Ministerial Conference on Environment. And of course, to Ms. Diop, spokeswoman for the Association of Waste Pickers in Bobsus Dump, and to Professor Steve Fletcher and his colleague Julia Cosella, Professor Steve Fletcher from the University of Portsmouth and Julia Cosella from Systemic. And to everyone who signed up today to come to this day of discussion and understanding of the issues pertaining to plastic pollution, and for your commitment to making a difference. My deep thanks for you being here. I also want to thank the Life Cycle Initiative, the Global Partnership on Marine Litter, and the Global Green Growth Institute, amongst others, for having really helped enable that this multi-stakeholder dialogue can happen. And I want to recognize the importance of hearing all voices in this room and virtually connected today. That matters. The voices of stakeholders, the voices of science, the voices of those who will help make this happen from industry, from grassroots. Welcome all. Look, I come to you with four basic messages. Four messages that I hope that you will keep and that you will be able to reflect on as we move forward. And the first message really is that today we will hear from multi-stakeholder initiatives that are trying to fix and address plastic pollution. We know that their number has doubled. More and more people are stepping in as activists and as actors in this space. There are many initiatives that are flourishing across the world, and we salute that. Led by businesses, led by NGOs, led by waste pickers, led by academia, and that is good. But while we are doing that, while we're stepping up, at the same time, our consumption of plastic is also increasing. So even though we make these commitments, which are great, it is not enough. Right now, the trajectory we are on is on a continued incline of plastic in our economy and therefore in our waste streams. So my first message is, it is great to have all these voices. What we need to do is to have them all sing in the same direction. And that's what this process is about. My second message is that the science is absolutely clear. Ending plastic pollution will require a full life cycle approach from source to sea. It'll have to drive circularity, and it'll have to enable us to address the environmental, the social, and yes, the economic dimensions of the solutions. A life cycle approach to plastic pollution means addressing all the potential impacts from extraction of the raw materials to the end of life management to avoid unintended trade-offs between the stages of the life cycle. And so what do we need to do? Well, the plastics economy does not only mean recycling, but it also means eliminating the production of products which can be considered unnecessary or problematic. It means designing for reuse and ensuring their effective reuse. And it does mean removing hazardous additives in plastic production that is bad for human health and bad for the environment. And we need to look at, yes, substitute materials that will require innovation and create new jobs, but we also need to see what kind of impacts that will have on the environment. And so understanding that alternatives are not a given, but that we have to assess the impact. And as you will hear today, research shows that a comprehensive circular economy could, in fact, deliver some real benefits to our society. If we reduce the volume of plastic, we can reduce the volume of plastic by 80% by 2040 into our oceans if we take particular action. We can reduce virgin plastic production by 55% in those plastics uses mainly responsible for pollution. We can save governments around $70 billion between 2021 and 2040. We can reduce greenhouse gases from the incineration and burning of plastic, and we can create jobs, decent jobs for people who need them, and mainly in the global south. So my second message really is The science is clear. We've got to fix this. And if we do so together, the entire world, we can shift it and shift it in the positive direction. My third message is that if we are to transform our economies and our societies to deliver this system-wide change, we need everyone, every solution, everybody involved. And that will mean a number of things. First of all, we have to think about how we design stuff. Do we design it for circularity, or do we design it for linear economy? Take, make, waste. We have to think about how we design for circularity. Do we legislate properly? How can we legislate in harmony so that the legislations amongst nations and the regulatory settings enable that transition? We need to have the right investments and the investment processes that understands that plastic can be a valuable resource. We are not anti-plastic. We understand what it does for our economies. We just don't want it to go into our environment and into our oceans and into our atmosphere, CO2, and into as chemicals, etc. So we need to make sure that we are investing in circularity. France, for example, allocated 40 million euros towards reuse investments in 2021 and 2022 as part of their circular economy fund. And we need to think about the infrastructure that we have to build, recycling, etc. And does that need to be done by the public sector or the private sector? Can we regulate the pricing of plastic such that the private sector would be interested in stepping in? These are the conversations that we need to have. And then we need to ensure, as the SDGs speak to, leaving no one behind, ensuring that those who today are dependent on tough jobs as waste pickers, that the jobs that transition into that new economy, that those are jobs that are for those people who are part of that transition. And to simplify things for consumers. I don't know when I buy something what kind of plastic it is, where does it come from, where will it go? And it's hard for consumers. And so we need to find a way to simplify this. And all of that has to be based on science. So my third message is that if we are going to make these shifts, we need everyone on board. Business, designer, waste pickers, the civil society, science, economy, law, and jobs and trade unions. And finally then, we have to understand that the scale of the thing we are about to do is enormous. But I will tell you this. In 1945, my mother was just 18 years old, and Denmark had just been liberated from occupation, and my mother had just graduated from high school, and she was sitting in a little cafe and drinking tea with a girlfriend. And at a table just across, there were these two Americans, and they had these strange blocks that my mother, had never seen. And she was curious, this 18-year-old girl, and she's listening, which she shouldn't be doing, but she is. And they go, "This is a new material. The future is plastic." And she goes, "What is plastic?" And that was 1945. So between 45 and today, this material has entered into our world, into our conscience, into our dependence, and into our convenience indeed, but also into our environment. We put it there, and we absolutely can take it out. And that is the magic of what we are embarking upon today. A negotiating process with all voices present that will look and understand this material and look and understand that, yes, we are dependent upon it, but also understand that it is our generation, it is our time, and it is right now that we start the process to end plastic pollution. We can do this, and with your help, we shall. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Inger. As you can see, as most of you will know, based on the points that were just raised, it is important for all of us, as mentioned by Inger, that we are involved and we include all stakeholders and that we do all that is necessary. And the three takeaways are very well noted. And just to give you a little bit of information, as you know, Inger Anderson is under the Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Director of United Nations Environmental Program. Headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya, following her successful leadership in the fifth session of the UN Environmental Assembly, Ms. Anderson is definitely encouraging all of us and all of us to roll up our sleeves because the world is watching and it is important that we make sure that we end pollution concerning plastic. Thank you. We will now go to the second speaker. His Excellency, Mr. Abdou Karim Sall, is the Senegalese Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development. We are honored here today to have him in Senegal, and also we look forward to hearing His Excellency's his addressing plastic pollution and his hopes for his preparatory meeting already, and also to set stone the dialogue of the multi-stakeholders. So thank you, Excellency.
Excellence, Madame Inge Anderson, Secrétaire général adjoint des Nations
Excellencies, Secretary General of the United Nations for the Environment, UNEP. Mrs. Aya Mamsepsi Job, members of the MOC Association for the Recuperation and Collection of Umbus, Professor Steve Fletcher, Professor of Ocean Policy and Economics, Director of Sustainability and Environment Research, Director of the Global Plastics Policy Center at the University of Portsmouth in England. Ladies and gentlemen, participants on all ranks, titles, and capacities. Allow me, before tackling this very important question, to wish a hearty welcome to all participants. Welcome to Senegal. I would also like to tell you how happy I am to take part in this multi-stakeholder dialogue in the matter of solutions developed by the various actors in the fight against the plastic pollution. You will easily understand the joy that I feel at hosting in Senegal the first international meeting devoted to the development of a legally binding instrument that should make it possible to deal in a sustainable manner with the problem of plastic pollution, which is today a real source of concern for our planet. Now, coming to your question, may I first point out that Senegal, like many other countries, has been facing every day the challenge of plastic pollution. It is enough to circulate in our cities and on our countryside to come to terms and realize it. As a matter of fact, Senegal produces more than 200,000 tons of plastic waste each year, a tiny part of which, some 10% actually, is recycled. The rest is released into nature and causes plastic pollution with harmful consequences for the environment, the economy, and public health. This waste actually causes visual pollution, resulting in high livestock mortality, as well as contributing to soil sealing and the obstruction of water drainage channels, thus contributing to flooding. Methods of treatment, in particular the burning in the open air, which is very common in this country, is bound to produce chemical substances which are pernicious for human health. It is in the light of this observation, therefore, that the state of Senegal had adopted Law 2015-09 of May 4, 2015, in the matter of the prohibition of the production, import, possession, distribution, use of low micron plastic bags, and the rational management of plastic waste. This piece of legislation, presenting objective limits to achieve its objective, was repealed and replaced by Law 2020-04 of January 8, 2020 in the matter of prevention and reduction of the environmental impact of plastic products. As I already explained, the law of 2015 had some difficulties in its implementation when it comes to its application, because that prohibition was only the matter of plastic bags. Plastic bags in 30 micron plastic, which makes it very, very difficult for those who are in charge of checking and monitoring to really calculate the true contained in plastic bags in terms of microns. Is it below or 30 microns? Very difficult to gauge. That law, as I explained, came into force on the 20th of April 2020. This new law prohibits the production, the use, and importation of plastic bags and plastic products with a high environmental impact, while accelerating the momentum in favor of the circular economy. Such law provides for a range of measures based on major innovations, including but not limited to the banning of single-use plastic products considered to be the main culprits of pollution, the ban of plastic bags at checkout, with the exception of those bags intended for the protection of foodstuff, the deployment of a new system for the collection and recovery of plastic bottles based on a deposit system, the establishment of an effective waste management by requiring the recovery of plastic bottles by producers or by eco-organizations to be established to that purpose, the establishment of the principle of extended producer responsibility to enable producers to better manage the end of life of their product by virtue of the polluter-payer principle, the extension of the principle of producer responsibility with a view of promoting eco-design, setting of targets for the incorporation of recycled plastics in the manufacture of new plastic products, setting a floor price for the purchase of plastic waste, and last but not least, the application of a plastic tax on products made from non-recycled plastic materials. In the light of such innovations, it is clear that the law in the matter of plastics is interested in the entire life of the plastic product and is meant to promote a genuine circular economy. Ladies and gentlemen, in view of the scale of the plastic pollution and in view of the projections that are very disconcerting, to say the least, the fight against this phenomenon requires the implementation of global solutions involving all producers and user countries. And in this perspective, Senegal has always campaigned in favor of the establishment of a legally binding multilateral treaty that will be capable of reducing the use of single-use products as well as strengthening the recycling industry. To do this, We need to encourage technological innovations, raise public awareness on the means of combating plastic waste, as well as promoting good practices which are essential for a rational management of plastics, particularly in developing countries. To this end, countries like Senegal, which have demonstrated real political will through the implementation of ambitious laws and regulations, have to be supported within the framework of international initiatives aimed at promoting innovation in the fight against pollution ecosystems through plastics. May I end by calling for strong collective and multilateral action in favor of the fight against plastic pollution, of course, under the leadership of the United Nations Environment Programme. Such multilateral action must be relying on the mutual experiences of all countries according to their specific context, as well as mobilizing all stakeholders, namely states, civil society, the private sector, scientific and technical research, as well as local authorities. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Mr. Abdul Karim. Just a quick reminder, we're a little bit running behind. We apologize for that, and we will not be able to do any Q&A at the moment. But what we would like to do is to go to the next speaker. Prior to moving forward to the next speaker, just a quick housekeeping check. Anyone who needs a gadget in terms of translation, please go to the desk and you should have it, and they'll be able to provide one for you to follow the exchanges. Now, in terms of the next speaker, we would have Ajamam Seini Diop. Ajamam Seini Diop is Association of Bokjom des récupérateurs et recycleurs de Mbabas. They would address what are the key challenges that are faced by the informal waste pickers, and also what are the challenges they face with plastic, and what would be the expectations for things to improve. So ladies and gentlemen, we welcome Mam Diop.
Assalamualaikum. maa ngi nuyu ñi fi teew ñëpp kenn ku ci nekk sa tur ak sa sant du nuyu asalaamaaleykum mbooloo mi maa ngi nuyu kenn ku ci nekk sa tur ak sa sant du nuyu monsieur le ministre de l'environnement di wax ni maa ngi tudd Adja Mame Seyni Paye Diop dëkk Malika maa ngi am fanweeri at ak juróom nekk première vice-présidente association Bokk Jom bu Mbabas nekk présidente comité femme maa ngi liggéey ci décharge bi 1998 damay for lépp loo xam ne mbuus la ak Evian ak këyit di ko jaay loo xam ne rek su ma ko foree jaay ko dinaa ci gagné loo xam ne naa ko mën a yóbbul sama njaboot maa ngi nekk nag chef de ménage nekk soutien de famille yor sama ay njaboot di leen ci dundal.
Assalamu alaikum. Bonjour à tout le monde.
Good afternoon to all of you. Minister for the Environment. I'm Yaman Karim Salah. I am a waste picker, and I've been working since 1998, and I'm 35 years old. I have my own family. I'm the bread earner, and through waste picking, I'm feeding my family, and I also have needs. And this waste picking allows me to live. So I'm very proud of this job I'm doing, and I can look after my children. Our working conditions are very difficult. We're picking waste, plastic waste, paper, and different materials. And this job is very hard. Uh, we've got bare hands, and when we try to seal this, the buyers are imposing the price to buy. So it's 150 CFA francs and 56 for bottles, plastic bottles. So it's very difficult for us to make ends meet. So we go to the landfill and we're waiting for the waste to be able to recycle and pick up. But very often the materials doesn't make it to the landfill. So you try to imagine how we can earn money if even the waste we should recycle is very often doesn't make it to the landfill. So what we're asking for is to be supported in order to improve our working conditions, because working with bare hands is very difficult, it's very hard, and we are really asking to be supported in this way. We would like as well to ask to be integrated and take part into any meetings. We want to be a part of these meetings because we would like to be trained. We would like to have working tools, because working with bare hands is not very good for your health, and it is sometimes very difficult. You can be injured. We have health issues, so there is no social welfare. So we would like to be consulted within the landfill, because a lot of people are not asking for our mind, what we think. We are asking to be integrated. We want to take part to any meetings at a national or international level, because we do not want to be excluded. We want to be present each time. Without us, we are working on a landfill, so we very often we are treated as waste, and we would like to be included, and we want more help. And I thank Mr. Minister, and really hope to have answers very soon. Thank you.
This was a very great testimony in terms of Aja Diop. Congratulations to you and your team for the hard work. And definitely, I think it's important that all of us here take away the fact that one key thing is that bottles, in terms of kg, are at 50, and also for plastic, we're at 75 francs for kg. So plastic is currently worth more. So that's one big key takeaway that we need to also make sure we take note. Thank you. We are now moving to our next speaker. We have Ms. Julia Koskela, professor. And Julia, before we welcome her, we'd like to pretty much give you a quick heads up that she would discuss a bit and give us context on the systemic approach to plastic, and what would there be, what are the silver buttons, and what is the level of ambition required for near and long term, and what could be the size of the prize from an environmental, social, and economic perspective. We welcome you. Thank you.
Good morning, distinguished delegates, ministers. Thank you so much, UNEP, for inviting us to speak today to share some of the science on what we know about the state of plastic pollution today and its solutions. Let's kick off with some of the facts that we know. So if we could bring up my slides, please. The first slide will already hit us with the big fact that 150 million tons of plastic waste are already in our oceans today. Can we bring up the slides, please? Thank you. And that figure of how much plastic is in the ocean today is growing daily, because we know that 40% of the short-lived plastics and the packaging waste that is arising every day is ending up as plastic pollution into the environment. With 2 billion people already not connected to waste collection services at the moment, and with a growing population, what we would need to do between now and 2040 in order to make sure everyone has the right to clean waste collection would be to connect 500,000 people every day to new waste collection services. That's 500,000 people we will need to reach and build new infrastructure for every single day. So this gives you a sense of the pace of change and the challenge. Finally, we know that only 21% of plastics that we are putting on the market are actually economically recyclable. Much less than that is actually being recycled today into new plastics. So also we have a lot of challenges to address in the circular economy and getting plastics to be reused again and again. Next slide, please. The University of Portsmouth and Systemic are delighted to be supporting UNEP with a Spotlight Plastics report that we are bringing together all of this science and much more about the solutions available to plastic waste. This will be created to help inform the International Negotiating Committee and this global treaty. The objective of the Spotlight report is to inform the people in this room and the decision makers about the ambition levels we need to have, the trade-offs that happen between different solutions, and which solution levers we can roll out to reach a solution on global plastic pollution. The audience is negotiators, industry, and others. The timeline of the report is that we are currently undergoing a consultation process with stakeholders throughout June, so please be involved, and the publication date will be by September. Next slide, please. This UNEP Spotlight report will draw on the best science that we have available from many, many sources. We will be drawing on breaking the plastic wave that Pew Charitable Trusts and Systemic worked on, We'll be drawing on Steve Fletcher's work with UNEP on the policy options to eliminate plastic pollution. Many other UNEP reports, many other sources. Recently, Systemic helped create Reshaping Plastics, many important sources to be drawing in, so we have a comprehensive analysis. Next slide, please. So I'm delighted to share today a sneak peek of some of the findings that this Spotlight report will be bringing to your fingertips. The first finding is that in the current direction of travel, we are not going in the right direction that we all want to be in. The global plastic waste production per year ending up into the environment is currently on track to triple by 2040, reaching 240 million tons entering the environment per year. That is under business as usual, tripling today's rate of plastics. Next slide, please. We also know that if you add up all of the current commitments from policy, from industry, there are some great things happening, but it's not enough to really change that picture. The analysis is showing that only 6% of that plastic pollution by 2040 would be reduced with today's policies and today's industry action. We need much increased ambition levels. Next slide, please. The second key finding is that there are no silver bullets to end plastic pollution. For example, recycling is so important, and we analyze lots of different solutions that we need to roll out for plastic pollution. But if you only focus on recycling and you put a lot of energy into this, you do ambitious redesign to make more plastic recyclable, you roll out all of the technologies we have, mechanical recycling, chemical recycling, and you push these fast, it still would only reduce plastic pollution per year by 35%, not decreasing on today's levels. Similarly, if we look only at reduction or only at collection and disposal, we're not turning the plastic pollution problem around like we want to. Next slide, please. Instead, the science says we need to implement a system-level change. We need to reach a system change scenario that will help us reach 80% less plastic pollution. This involves tackling plastic pollution causes throughout the life cycle, both upstream and downstream, and having a really comprehensive approach. Next slide, please. So what is involved in a real system change scenario? The good news is we have developed a credible pathway to reduce plastic pollution by 80% by 2040. That 80% solution is available with today's known technologies. It's a positive story that we have the solutions available. It is also designed to be within the boundaries of climate, social, and economic constraints that we need to respect. So you're looking at a key chart from our reports, our findings. We call this the wedges chart. And it shows the different wedges and colors of the solutions we need to roll out to reach the system change scenario. The top line on the graph is showing how business as usual plastic production is increasing. And then we have this dark blue wedge that's showing how much we can reduce plastic production through innovation and reuse and reduction. That is 30% of the solution to reduce plastic pollution. Importantly, the scope of plastics we're looking at in this chart is short-lived plastics and single-use plastics and packaging. A lot of that will need to be reduced. In this chart, we're not so far including construction waste and automotive, agricultural. Some of those applications we know are growing and so important for a holistic solution. The blue wedge is showing how we need to innovate new materials to roll out solutions like switching to paper or switching to compostable products. That's 17% of the solution. The green is showing how we need to grow mechanical and chemical recycling by 2040. That is 20% of the solution. In yellow, the science shows by 2040, we will still need to have safe disposal technologies available and make sure that plastic waste is entering those and being collected properly. That's 23% of the solution. And by 2040, unfortunately, even with a system change scenario, there is still this 20% missing solutions area. This is the red wedge of plastic pollution entering the environment. And for that, we're going to need to see a lot of innovation of new technologies and rolling out more improvements to get even closer to zero plastic pollution. What you're looking at with this wedges chart is really a system change. This is a high ambition level scenario, and I'm so glad that we're all in the room today to start seeing how we can bring that high ambition into the policy space. It's going to be so needed. The Spotlight report also recognizes that different solutions need to be rolled out in different geographies around the world, and it will give some information about those. As a sneak peek, you can see this top line. We need to reduce plastic consumption and waste and move to substitutes all across the world, but especially we'll see some drastic reductions in high-income countries, where we need to see per capita plastic reduction really reducing, where it's so high at the moment. For collection rates, we need to build entire industries and really scale up a lot of these collection industries, especially in low-income plus middle-income countries, whilst respecting the livelihoods of the informal sector and the speakers that we heard from today. For recycling, we need to roll out recycling infrastructure globally very fast, especially in high and middle income countries where the largest volumes of plastic waste are arising. For safe disposal, again, we need huge buildup of industries and safe disposal technologies rising, especially in low-income countries. And finally, for microplastics management, the largest microplastics flows are currently coming from high-income countries, and we'll need to see the highest ambition in those countries to reduce. If we do the next slide, sorry, I missed a slide. I'll give you a moment to look at the geographical breakdown I just spoke about with the different high-income, middle-income, and low-income countries needing to roll out these very focused solutions. On the next slide, the science also helpfully tells us which metrics, next slide please, which metrics we will need to be reaching every single year to tell if we are on track for the system change scenario. Here you can see some metrics we have pulled out from the 2025 timeline, and those will need to be reached in order to make sure that we can reach the 2040 metrics we need to reach for system change scenario. For example, for reduce and substitute, already by 2025, we need to be aiming for 10% reduction in plastic waste production in short-lived plastics in order to be able to reach that 47% reduction by 2040. For collection rates, we need to be expanding very quickly, already by 2025, reaching 60%. Okay. And so that by 2040, we can expand further. Recycling capacity needs to be 1.6x, going much faster, and same with the other solutions. The last thing I will leave you with on this final slide is that we don't have time to waste. The science is telling us that even if we delay only 5 years, waiting for the policy to come into place, waiting for action to be taken, 80 million metric tons of additional plastic pollution would end up in our oceans, much, much more into the environment. So even before we can pass a plastics treaty, we need a lot of action, and in the plastics treaty, we need a lot of action. So I will now hand over to my colleague Steve to go through the policy solutions available. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia, and good morning, everybody. This brings us very nicely to the question of how to achieve the changes that Julia has described. For the Spotlight report, we're examining a wide range of policies and actions across the plastics life cycle, across sectors, from government, businesses, and civil society, to determine their potential to deliver system change priorities. Oh, thank you. This slide shows some examples of how specific policies map onto the system change priorities. In practice, though, we're finding that multiple policies contribute to multiple parts of the system change agenda. We're also finding that the effectiveness of these policies is often constrained. Although the constraints differ, they can often be traced back to interventions that do not take full account of the broader system in which the intervention is being placed. This is made worse by inconsistent and patchy monitoring and reporting, which makes it very difficult to monitor and measure policy effectiveness in any case. Next slide, please. So the research that we're doing for the Spotlight report is helping us to identify the sorts of global and national structures that can enable and support the type of system change agenda that Julia described. So far, and this is a work in progress, we've identified 5 enablers. The first enabler is to overcome the diversity of intentions and messaging at the global scale to identify a single, ambitious, time-bound, principled global goal. This should be easy to understand for everybody and provide a driver for consistent international action. The second enabler that we've identified, primarily to identify enable coherent national approaches to system change, is national action plans with national targets and coherent national level plans. These would benefit from being time-bound with targets aligned to the global goal. They should also contain a mix of policies and actions that reflect the specific national context that they're operating within, as well as a costed transition plan to move from the current policy setup to the next. Thirdly, the third enabler is a new monitoring and reporting system for the plastics life cycle. This will significantly enable the system change transition by providing harmonized definitions and standards, consistent methods and metrics to measure progress, and, importantly, to inform adaptation, and much improved transparency and disclosure of data. The fourth enabler is a framework for scientific actions to fill knowledge gaps, to share best practices, to support research and development activities, and to drive the much-needed innovation. This will significantly assist our ability to develop and apply more holistic, systems thinking-based approaches to tackle plastic pollution. And fifth, and the final enabler so far, is the provision of transition finance and support, primarily to enable the action plans, the national action plans, to be developed and delivered by bringing in platforms for technology transfer, knowledge sharing, the rapid scale-up of solutions that work, benefit sharing, and capacity building. As I say, this is a work in progress, and we'll develop and refine these further through the Spotlight process. Next slide, please. So we hope that you've enjoyed this very short sneak peek into the Spotlight report. As a reminder, what will be coming through the Spotlight report to be published in September is an outline of an ambitious but achievable alternative plastics future, along with costs, benefits, and potential trade-offs. We will look at the policies and actions across multiple sectors that can help us get there. In particular, we'll share the evidence of what works and why it works, the potential to connect to other policy areas, such as climate and biodiversity, to get meaningful and positive policy connections and action connections, and what policies can be scaled up and move forward quickly. And finally, we will, of course, relate these findings closely to the terms of the mandate for the Global Instrument to End Plastic Pollution. This, of course, is the key opportunity to support the sort of system change we're talking about. Next slide, please. Finally, it's important to note that this is an open process, and we're extremely keen to hear from you, learn from your experiences, and share your insights. There are several members of the Spotlight team here today. There's myself and Julia, who you've met, my colleagues Kieran and Jose, who are just going to wave and possibly do a dance or something. No, okay. So our email addresses are on the screen, but we're here most of the next 3 or 4 days. So please do take a moment to grab us at any point during that time. Thank you very much.